The first time you see your account go from $500 to $543, that's the moment you start losing. You just don't realize it yet. Because in that moment, it doesn't feel like losing at all. It feels like the opposite. It feels like something finally clicked. Like after all the videos, all the charts, all the random explanations you tried to piece together, something suddenly makes sense. Not in a complicated way. Not in some deep technical way. Just clean, simple, almost obvious. You look at that number again. $500 became $543. And somehow, it doesn't feel like $43. It feels like proof. It feels like confirmation. Like that quiet voice in your head saying, "See, I knew it. I just needed a chance." And if you've ever felt that before, even once, you already know how convincing that voice can be. Because it doesn't sound reckless. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like confidence. It sounds like the beginning of something. And that's exactly why you need to pay attention. Because what happens next is the part almost nobody warns you about. So if you're still here, stay with me. And if you actually want to understand how this game works beneath the surface, not the version people sell you, but the version that slowly changes you, subscribe. You're going to need this. Because right there, in that exact moment, something starts to shift. That feeling doesn't stay inside that one trade. It follows you into the next one, and the one after that. It starts shaping how you see yourself, how you see the market, how you approach every decision that comes next. You begin to believe you understand something now, that maybe you're a little faster than most people, a little sharper. Maybe you just needed to get in, and now you're in. So naturally, you go again, and then again, and this time, maybe a little bigger. But here's the part no one really explains in the beginning. You're not actually making money yet, not in the way you think. You're learning something else, something much more subtle and much more dangerous. You're learning how it feels to be right, just enough to keep you playing, just enough to make sure you don't stop. You don't realize it, but you're being pulled in, conditioned, quietly trained by a system that doesn't reward confidence. It feeds on it, because every time you hit that buy button, there is someone on the other side, someone who isn't guessing, someone who doesn't need to feel excited, someone who needs you to feel exactly what you're starting to feel right now. You think you're stepping into opportunity, but what you're really stepping into is liquidity. And the most dangerous part? It doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like progress. It feels like you're getting better. And what makes this even harder to see is that nothing about the next levels removes that illusion. It just gets better at hiding it. Most people think this entire journey is about money, going from a small account to something bigger, from a few $100s to thousands, and maybe one day, something that actually feels serious. And on the surface, that's exactly what it looks like. Bigger numbers, larger position, higher stakes. But that's not what's really changing. If you slow down and really look at it, the thing that evolves the fastest isn't your account. It's you. The way you think starts to shift. The way you react changes. The way you justify your decisions changes. Things you would have rejected 6 months ago suddenly start to feel reasonable. You tell yourself you're adapting. You tell yourself you're gaining experience. You tell yourself this is what growth feels like. And sometimes, maybe it is, but not always, because your confidence builds, but it doesn't build cleanly. It bends things. It distorts what you see, just enough that you don't notice it happening. Every level feels like progress, but underneath that, something else is forming, something quieter, something you don't fully recognize until it's already part of you. And that's what this is really about. Not the account, not the wins, not even the losses, but the version of you that each level slowly creates. Because every step forward comes with something attached to it. A belief that feels true, but isn't. A small shift in perception that seems harmless until it compounds. And a cost that never shows up in your balance, but shows up everywhere else. In your patience, in your sleep, in the way you react when you're wrong, in how much of your self-worth starts getting tied to a number on a screen. That's the part no one tracks. That's the part no one teaches. And if you actually want to understand how this works, not the simplified version, not the clean version people repeat after they survive it, but what really happens underneath all of it, then you have to see the full picture. Because once you see it, You can't unsee it. And the only way to understand it clearly is to go back to where it started. Back to the level where everything still feels small, controlled, almost harmless. The level where it quietly begins to take hold. Level 1. $500, the feeling of being right. At the beginning, it really does feel harmless. You open a position. Nothing complex. No deep analysis. No real system. Just something you saw. Something that made sense in the moment. Maybe you're sitting at your laptop with a half-finished coffee beside you. The charts are open. A few tabs are running. Maybe there's a video in the background explaining a setup you only half understand. You're not really reading the market yet. You're reacting to it. But it feels focused. It feels alive. And then within 10 minutes, you're up $20. It's not a big number, but your reaction to it is, you lean forward without even noticing. Your eyes lock onto the screen. Your focus sharpens. Everything else fades out just a little. For a second, there's this quiet clarity, like things are finally starting to make sense. You close the trade quickly. You don't want to risk losing it. And when it locks in, that number feels real, solid, earned. It's only $20, but it feels like evidence. It feels like you did something right, and that feeling matters more than the money. But what you don't see is what actually just happened. You didn't learn how to trade. You learned how it feels to be right, and that feeling doesn't just disappear. It sticks. It follows you into the next decision. You click a little faster. You hesitate a little less. You trust yourself a little more than you should. And slowly, without noticing, you stop making decisions and start making them based on memory. That feeling, that confirmation, that tiny rush of being right, you want it again. And the more you chase it, the faster your decisions become. And the faster your decisions become, the more mistakes slip in. But at this level, you don't call them mistakes yet. You call them learning. You call them small losses. You call them part of the process. And maybe some of them are. But something deeper is happening. You're building an emotional relationship with the market before you've built a real framework for understanding it. You're teaching your brain that being right feels good, and being wrong needs to be fixed quickly. That sounds harmless, but it isn't. Because at this level, you're not building skill. You're building dependency. And that's where the illusion begins. Level 2. $5,000, the system that explains you. When your account grows, everything starts to feel more serious. $5,000 isn't something you casually try with anymore. It has weight now. Not life-changing weight, but enough to make you sit differently. Enough to make you pay attention in a new way. You open the platform with more intention. You start writing things down. Entry rules, exit rules, watch lists, levels, setups. You track your trades. You organize your thoughts. Maybe you start using a spreadsheet. Maybe you name your strategies. Maybe you finally feel like you're not just guessing anymore. And for the first time, it feels like you have structure, like you're in control. You call it a system. And for a while, it actually seems like it's working. A few good days. Maybe even a good week. Your confidence feels more stable now. Less random. More grounded. You're not just clicking anymore. You're following rules. At least, that's what it feels like. But if you slow down and really look at it, the system isn't controlling your behavior. It's explaining it. Every rule you write down fits what you already believe. Every trade you take feels justified because it matches something you've already decided is valid. When it works, it reinforces everything. When it doesn't, you tweak the rule. You don't question yourself. You adjust the story. And over time, something subtle starts happening. You remember the wins more clearly. You forget the losses faster. You replay the good days in your head and compress the bad ones into something smaller than they really were. Not on purpose. Not consciously. But consistently. You start saying things like, that one didn't count. I broke my rule there. That was just bad market conditions. That setup still works. And maybe sometimes that's true. But sometimes, you're not analyzing reality anymore. You're protecting the version of yourself that needs to believe you're improving. And that's where it gets dangerous. Because the more organized you become, the easier it is to mistake organization for truth. A spreadsheet can make bad behavior look disciplined. A journal can make emotional decisions look strategic. A set of rules can make overconfidence feel professional. And slowly, you're no longer tracking reality. You're editing it. And the more you believe your version, the harder it becomes to see what's actually true. Level 3, $25,000, the illusion of freedom. Then you hit a level that feels like a real breakthrough. 25,000. Now you can trade freely. No restrictions. No limits. No feeling like the system is holding you back. For the first time, it feels like you've stepped into the real game. You wake up earlier. You watch the open. You take multiple trades throughout the day. Your screens feel more serious now. Your routine feels sharper. Everything feels faster, cleaner, more professional, like you've finally become the person you were trying to be. But there's something hidden inside this level, something most people don't expect, because freedom doesn't just give you more opportunity. It multiplies your mistakes. Every hesitation compounds faster. Every impulse executes instantly. Every misread has no friction stopping it. You can double down before you've even processed the first mistake. You can try to fix something before you even understand what went wrong. You can be wrong at 9:38, angry by 9:41, revenge trading by 9:44, and telling yourself you're managing the position by 9:47. And when things start to break, they don't break slowly. They break fast. But the hardest part isn't the loss. It's not even the number. The hardest part is not knowing why it keeps happening. You can feel something is off. You can feel it in your chest when you open the platform. That slight tension, that quiet doubt, that moment where your hand is near the mouse, but part of you already knows you're not calm. You're aware enough to know you're making mistakes, but not precise enough to understand them. And that gap, that space between awareness and clarity, that's where most people collapse. Because you can't fix what you can't see. So, you keep trading. You keep adjusting. You keep telling yourself the next week will be cleaner. The next setup will be better. The next trade will confirm that you still know what you're doing. But deep down, you're not really looking for clarity anymore. You're looking for relief. And that's what makes this level so dangerous. Because freedom feels like progress, until you realize it has simply removed the barriers that used to slow down your worst decisions. So you keep trading, hoping clarity will somehow show up inside the noise. And if you've made it this far, there's a reason. Because somewhere, in everything you just heard, something felt familiar. Not obvious, not loud, but close enough to recognize. And if that recognition is starting to feel a little uncomfortable, that's exactly where this begins to matter. Because what comes next is where the game stops feeling random and starts revealing what it's actually doing to you. So stay with me. And if you're starting to see parts of yourself in this, subscribe. You're going to want to understand where this goes before you get there. Level 4. $100,000. The quiet detachment. At some point, the numbers get big enough that something inside you changes. 100,000 in your account. And instead of excitement, there's silence. Not emptiness. Not disappointment. Just quiet. You open your platform. You see positions that would have made your heart race a year ago. And now, nothing. No adrenaline. No rush. No spike of emotion. Just execution. You follow your plan. You size properly. You manage risk. You enter. You exit. And from the outside, it looks like discipline. It looks like control. It looks like you finally became the trader you were trying to be. And in many ways, you did. But it comes with something else. Something no one really prepares you for. Because the more controlled you become here, the more disconnected you start to feel from everything else. Conversations feel slower. People feel distracted. You notice things you didn't before. How reactive most people are. How emotional decisions look from the outside. How little attention people actually pay to what they're doing. And slowly, you start to pull away. Not intentionally. Not aggressively. Just gradually. You're still there. You still show up. You still talk. But part of you is somewhere else. Watching. Analyzing. Detached. And over time, that distance becomes normal. You stop reacting the way you used to. You stop feeling the same highs. The same lows. Everything becomes flatter. More controlled. More contained. And while that sounds like progress, there's something hidden inside it. Because the more detached you become, the easier it is to overlook what you're actually losing. Not money. Something else. Something harder to measure. The connection. The feeling. The reason you started. And most people don't notice when that disappears. They just wake up one day and realize trading doesn't feel the same anymore. Not worse. Just different. Level 5. $500,000 when you start to feel your own weight. $500,000. By the time you get here, things don't spike anymore. They settle. The pressure doesn't come in waves. It stays. Quiet. Constant. Always there in the background. Whether you're trading or not. You don't take as many trades now. You wait longer. You pass on setups you would have taken instantly a year ago. Your entries are sharper, more selective, almost surgical. And from the outside, it looks like mastery. It looks like patience. It looks like you've figured it out. But inside, it feels different. Because one day, something subtle happens. You place an order, and you notice the price react. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone else would care about. But you see it. You recognize it. That small shift in the tape, that slight hesitation in the move, it lines up too perfectly with your entry. And for a second, and you pause. Because for the first time, you realize something uncomfortable. You're not just observing the system anymore. You're inside it, interacting with it, affecting it. And that realization should feel powerful. Sometimes it does, but more often, it feels heavy. Because now, every decision carries a different kind of weight. Not just financial, structural. You're not just placing trades anymore. You're influencing movement. Even if it's small. Even if it's subtle. And once you feel that, you can't unfeel it. The fun doesn't disappear all at once. It fades. Quietly. Gradually. Until one day, you notice it's not really there anymore. And what replaces it is responsibility. Level 6. $2 million you become the structure. At $2 million, the game doesn't feel like trading anymore. It feels like management. You spend less time looking at charts and more time dealing with things that used to feel completely unrelated. Calls, paperwork, conversations about tax structures, risk exposure, capital allocation. You sit with people whose job isn't to grow your money, but to protect it. And without realizing it, your language starts to change. You stop thinking in terms of trades. You start thinking in terms of systems, correlations, drawdowns, scenarios, things that don't care about individual wins or losses, only long-term survival. And the strangest part? Your time doesn't feel like yours anymore. Even when you're not actively trading, something is running in the background. Something needs to be reviewed, adjusted, anticipated. You wake up, and before you even open your laptop, part of your mind is already scanning, already thinking about exposure, already replaying scenarios. You're no longer just someone with a skill. You are the structure that holds that skill together. And structures don't get to switch off. There's no clean separation anymore. No clear on and off. It's always there. Quiet. Persistent. Running underneath everything else in your life. And from the outside, it still looks like success. But inside, it feels like something else entirely. Because now you understand something most people never reach. The higher you go, the less this feels like a game. And the more it feels like something you're responsible for holding together. Level 7. 8 figures when nothing surprises you anymore. And then, eventually, you cross into a level very few people ever experience. 8 figures. And nothing about it feels the way you imagined. There's no moment, no rush, no sense of arrival, no dramatic shift where everything suddenly feels different. Just a different kind of routine. A call before the market opens. A short conversation. A few decisions made in a handful of words. Execution happens through systems, through relationships, through structures you didn't even know existed when you started. Everything works. Everything flows. Everything is efficient. And yet, something is missing. Because at this level, money solves almost every practical problem. Comfort is no longer something you chase. It's something you maintain, effortlessly, consistently. You don't think about bills. You don't think about expenses. You don't think about survival. But comfort doesn't create feeling. It removes friction. And when friction disappears, something else disappears with it. You stop being surprised. Wins don't hit the same. Losses don't shake you the same. Everything becomes expected, measured, processed before it even fully lands. And the thing that brought you here, that curiosity, that intensity, that almost naive excitement, it's still there somewhere, but you can't access it the way you used to. And the higher you go, the further away it feels, because at every level, You gained something, but you also gave something up. And most of the time, you didn't even notice when it happened. But the real cost of all of this isn't hidden inside any single level. It doesn't sit at $500, or fem, null, or even $2 million. You don't feel it clearly while you're inside it. You only see it when you step back far enough to look at the entire path. And when you finally do, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. You were never just learning how to make money. You were learning how to think, how to react, how to justify, how to see yourself. And every level shaped that, whether you realized it or not. So the real question isn't how far you can go. It's this: do you actually understand what each level is turning you into? Because once you see that clearly, you don't just trade differently. You don't just manage money differently. You move differently. And if this changed the way you see your own journey even a little, take a second, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what level you think you're actually in right now. Because most people are playing a game they don't even realize they're inside.